So first off, thank you to everybody for joining me for this session. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the A word. And if you haven't been able to guess what that is, just kind of based on what you see here on that slide, that is Agile. And the way that the reason why I framed it this way is because I know that Agile can either be that a thing that either when you hear it or if you know about it, it inspires, it inspires change and really inspires you. But it can also be a word that is really, really triggering for some people, and it could be a really bad word in some places. So I'm going to share some tips to help those of you out there who may be in some ways new to Agile. Maybe you have heard about it, just through reading or through attending talks or conferences, and you're pretty excited and you want to put it to work in your organization and with your team, but you don't quite know where to get started. Or you may be up against a bit of resistance and have some hesitance among the people that you're working with, the teams that you're working with. So I'm going to give you some tips here to help to get you started. First up, just a disclaimer here that the views that I'm going to be talking about, these tips, everything, these are all based on my experiences, helping my teams and my colleagues to understand and adopt Agile. So this is for all the, I guess, any ethics lawyers who might be watching this. I'm not speaking on behalf of the government or my agency. Just want to get that out of the way first. So a little bit about me. I'm a certified Scrum professional, Scrum master. I'm a project management professional as well. And, I pretty much specialize at this point in doing a lot of Drupal-based projects. So a lot of website redesigns, website migrations, and things along those lines. And I'm a federal employee, and I've been working in the federal government space for about 15 years, a little more. And I'm currently based at the National Archives, and I live here in DC. And I should also mention too, if you have any questions at all as I'm going through the slides, don't hesitate to drop them into the chat. And as mentioned earlier, if we have time, at the end, I will aim to answer any questions that you have. But during the presentation, I may not be able to see them, but at the end, we'll definitely get to the questions. All right. So first up here, my Agile journey really starts around 2017. And so it was right around that time that I was assigned to a pretty rather large scale, one of my first large scale Drupal projects, which involved a site that was pretty old at that time. It hadn't been touched in maybe about 10 years. It existed outside of a content management system. And we were tasked with migrating that site into Drupal 8, and at the same time, redesigning the front end as well. And so I should add, up to that point, everything that I pretty much knew about Agile was really based on, a lot of knowledge that I gained from reading, from, articles, blogs online. It was from listening to talks, at events like this one right here, attending conferences as well. And I thought that I had a pretty good grasp of things. And I should also mention that I was really focused on Scrum at that time as well. That was sort of my introduction into Agile. And at that point, I felt really confident in what I knew, and I was ready to put my knowledge into action. And so I asked our then web branch chief hey, for this project, would you mind if I help the team and led the team in an Agile approach for this? And luckily she agreed, and the rest is pretty much history. And from that point forward, every project that I've worked with, worked on, been managing, I've brought an Agile approach to it. And I've learned a lot of things along the way. Everything did not always go well. And there are definitely some things that I wish that I had knew in the beginning, to allow me to help people a little bit better, and to also just to be able to just to have a smoother transition into Agile. And so these are some of the lessons that I'm going to share with you today. And again, take these with you if you are someone who is really curious about Agile right now, and you want to get started with it, but you don't know where to start. You might be up against some resistance. So my first tip to you is to forget everything that you think that you know about Agile. And so this is if you've ever seen Men in Black before, it's Will Smith. He's He's holding up that mind eraser. So I want you to try to do that. Like, just try to forget everything that you think that you know about Agile, especially if you just have a surface understanding of it right now. One of the main reasons why I say that is because looking back on my own experience, I did a lot of self-guided learning initially, as I mentioned, and I developed a lot of misconceptions along the way. And in addition to that, whenever I encountered any resistance to Agile, encounter people who just did not want to hear about it, did not want to adopt the principles and the practices, it was oftentimes due to misconceptions that they also had as well. So here, as I mentioned, so any bad experiences and poor implementations of Agile are often the main factors that really keep people away from it, that keep people, they don't want to have anything to do with it. So it's really important for, first off, for you to kind of just do a hard reset of what you think that you know, because you may have likely picked up some misconceptions about Agile if you're just getting started. And it's also good to do a reset in order to understand this, so that you kind of have an understanding of why people may be resistant. Could be because they had a really, really bad experience about it at some point, may have been misguided or given some false information about it at some point along the way. And so one thing that I always tell people is just to understand the things that Agile is now. So when you're doing this reset of what you think Agile is, start with thinking about what it is not. So it is not a specific tool or software. Just because, you use Jira or Asana or Trello, those are tools, those are great, but those don't make you Agile. And I think a lot of people have think that. I know I thought in the beginning that Agile was part of Agile was just using a specific tool. I also understand that Agile is not a specific meeting or a specific event either. There are some frameworks and some methods of being Agile that may include those things, but just because you have a sort of daily meeting, or you have certain retros or certain elements that you may have heard about and you've implemented them, those are great, but that doesn't actually always mean that you are specifically Agile. Another thing too is just to know that Agile is not a specific set of rules. So just because you maybe one day your organization has decided, hey, everybody who's a project manager, we're now going to call you guys Agile coaches or Scrum masters. That's fine in name, but that's not necessarily just all that Agile is. So just understand those things first when you're doing that reset. And again, another reason why I encourage people just to start fresh and to forget the things that you know is because that helps you to make way for new insights and to be able to take in the correct teachings and correct knowledge early on. And it'll also help you to kind of understand like where you need to grow and where you also may want to focus your learning at as well. So tip number 2 is to start with the basics. Start with the basics. And as I mentioned, when I first was introduced to Agile, my entry point was Scrum. And I'm going to just bring up this slide here. So this is a look at many of the different Agile methods and frameworks that are out there. Some of these may be familiar to some of you if you kind of have like a surface understanding of Agile, you've been studying on your own. There's Kanban, there's disciplined Agile, there's less, there's safe. And just for some background information on these frameworks essentially are, they give you prescribed, there's a set of like prescriptive methods, if you will, that you can use to jumpstart your team into becoming Agile. And those things are great, but I always tell people that you really want to start with understanding first and foremost what Agile means at a really foundational level. And to get there, what you want to do is to first and foremost is to start thinking of Agile as a mindset first. So before you dive head first into starting out with any particular Agile framework or method, first just take a step back and understand that Agile is a mindset. And it's based on a set of 4 values and 12 principles that stem from the Agile Manifesto. And so this is actually a screenshot of the Agile Manifesto website. The official name is actually the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. And a little bit of background information on this is that back in 2001, a group of software developers came together because they were looking to uncover better ways of developing software. Now, some of them up to this point were practicing and using methods that we now understand or consider to be agile methods or agile frameworks. But nonetheless, they came together at that time to really kind of distill their knowledge and learnings into one kind of concise, I guess, body of knowledge, if you will. And so they came up with this, what's known as the Agile Manifesto. And you can kind of think of this as like the Agile Constitution. It really kind of is the backbone for what we consider to be Agile right now. And so if you have not done it already, again, if you are new to Agile, if you have like a surface understanding of it, you want to get started, or again, if you only know about specific frameworks up to this point, take a step back first and read this. And so these are the 4 core values of Agile. And one thing about this is that whenever you see the values written out, there's always going to be some type of formatting difference in the way that the words are presented. So the words on the left are always going to be a bit more prominent than those on the right. And that's because the things on the left are valued more in Agile. So individuals and interactions are valued way more than processes and tools. Those things have a place, but the individuals and the interactions are the things that matter way more, right? So working software over comprehensive documentation. I know in projects, we like to spend a lot of time, we have to sometimes, creating documents of any kind or making sure that we check off certain boxes before a project can launch, because that's what maybe is required by our organizations. And maybe that same energy, in doing so, generating all that documentation, kind of spinning our wheels and not really getting at the heart of the matter and really working on and producing what we need to produce, which is actually the software or whatever that product is that you should be creating in that project. Next up is customer collaboration over a contract negotiation. What this really gets at is that, normally in projects, if it's Waterfall, or I would say any traditional project methodology, normally there's not a lot of collaboration between that project team and the people, the customers or end users that you're actually building that product for. And so communication and that collaboration may only happen at those contract negotiation points. When that project is kicking off, when you're developing maybe that RFP, or maybe when changes come up or issues come up during the project, and maybe then once again when you're handing over the actual end product. So that's normally how it would go in a lot of traditional aspects of project management, if you will. But in Agile, it's really more of a focus on just continuous collaboration with your customer at all points throughout the project. And then the 4th value is responding to change over following a plan. And I should point out here that oftentimes when I have encountered people who did not have a favorable view of Agile, it was often related to this point right here. So a lot of people they are under the impression that Agile simply means you're just building something blindly in the dark, that you're just going to go off and just whatever happens, and that's what it is. And that's something that could be very scary, especially to management, because that could signify there's going to be a lot of time wasted and money wasted. But Agile's plan does actually exist. You do want to start off knowing that you're going to, knowing or having a vision about what your end result is going to be. However, the thing that is really valued more is that you're not just sticking to a plan, but you're actually going to be open to responding to the changes that may occur along the way based on the collaboration that may take place or that will take place between your project team and the customers that you're serving. And so these are the 12 principles. I'm not going to go through all of these just for the interest of time. But as I mentioned, the Agile Manifesto, it lists out and kind of shows us how we can actually embody Agile, what it means. So you see some specific attributes or actions here about what agility is. Satisfying your customers with early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Building projects around motivated individuals. Promoting sustainability. Your Agile processes should promote sustainability as well. So those are all the 12 principles of Agile, and I definitely encourage you to take a look again at that Agile manifesto on your own if you've not done so already, and especially if you're just starting out. And one other point that I'd like to make here is that, if you, at the very least, if as long as you are approaching your work where you are incorporating the values and the principles of Agile into the work that you do, your team embodies those things, your organization embodies what's in the Agile manifesto. At the end of the day, you are Agile. So that is very, very important to understand. Just because you are, you don't have to subscribe to one specific Agile framework. Your organization doesn't have to use SAFe or Scrum necessarily, or Kanban to be Agile. Those are great things. And I guess I'm not telling you not to use those, but I guess, again, if you're just starting out, to first and foremost understand agility, being Agile is a mindset. And to start here first. And that'll also give you a better understanding of the frameworks out there. And also give you a better understanding of which frameworks may work best for you. Because as you start to put some of these principles into practice, you may discover that there may be a certain framework that helps you to do that better than some others. But again, start to get a foundational understanding of these things first. My third tip is to start small. So that very first project that I worked on, where we were migrating that website and redesigning it, was able to help the team to build to adopt those Agile practices for the first time. So we were a pretty small team, I guess, relatively speaking. So it was about maybe 7 of us, and I like to point that out. And again, we were using Scrum, and I just want to point out the importance of starting small, because with Scrum, and you may find this if you do decide to go with a certain framework, any framework, there's going to be a bit of startup time that is necessary, a lot of initial coordination that is necessary. So Scrum, for example, it involves having daily stand-up meetings and, having to work within a set block of time. So we worked in 2-week sprints, and having retrospectives every 2 weeks, and doing a demo every 2 weeks, and then also budgeting time in between all that to work on the backlog, to refine the backlog, and to stay on top of what was coming next. And so that requires a great deal of coordination amongst people to know what time works best for everyone and to really get everybody to buy in. So start small. And again, start with a small team because it's easier to coordinate. So again, if you are on the edge right now and you're thinking about, you want to use certain Agile methods for a project, again, if you do, whatever you do, start small first. It's easier coordination. There's also the benefit of having a shorter feedback loop. So you, as that project leader, that project manager, whatever role that you are going to play, Scrum Master, whatever role that you're going to play in introducing Agile to your organization and working with your team to adapt it, you'll be able to, because it's small, you'll be able to see pain points and the things that are not working well that you guys may need to improve going forward. And also the other benefit of having a small team first is that there's a better, it just helps for better transfer of knowledge. And that'll be important because just understand that by you taking the lead to introduce Agile to your organization, we are going to have to do some teaching. You're going to have to help to bring your team up to speed. And it's a lot easier to do that with one team at one time, as opposed to working with multiple teams across an entire organization. So just keep that in mind. Another aspect of starting small is don't be afraid to start with one small project, when you're getting started. Instead of just going, your first time out with Agile being with a very large project, it's really high stakes, high visibility. You don't want to do that. Start small with a small project, one with slow visibility and less stakes involved, because it just lowers the risk. There's a lower impact because they're not going to go smoothly. You want to just think of your first project with Agile, and I think this applies really for anything. If you're doing anything for the first time, it's a pilot in some ways. It's not gonna go perfect. It's gonna be a test run. You can definitely look at it that way. And so if you start with a small project, one that's kind of a little lower impact, low visibility, there won't be too many consequences if you have to reset in the middle, or maybe if the time has to be stretched out a little bit. So I had that benefit that with that first project, it was a large project, but at the same time, we had the the benefit of just kind of being able to set our own boundaries. And if we had to if we encountered some issues along the way, and we had to go over the processes again, and to sort of shift how we were kind of working in the Scrum framework, we could do so without really, causing, I guess, any major issues with the project. So another thing to keep in mind in terms of starting small is don't be afraid to just apply agile methods to either a small phase of your project or just one single phase of the project, instead of feeling like you have to use agile methods for an entire project across the entire project lifecycle. You may find that agile may only work during the discovery phase, or the design phase. When you are have a project, we're oftentimes, or if we're just developing wireframes, or mock-ups, that really may be the only time where it makes sense. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're just starting out. Maybe just break it down into, or just identify one particular area where it makes more sense to use those agile methods. Second thing here is that just to keep in mind that, again, agile methods are not limited to development activities only. So keep that in mind also. And honestly, just a rule of thumb is anywhere in your project, any phase that may benefit from, having high collaboration, or where you need to really produce a product very frequently and to iterate on that project. So wherever it makes sense for that to occur, that could be a really, really, really good place to implement those agile processes there. So tip number four is to give yourself grace. And what I mean by that is just to be kind to yourself, just to not be so hard on yourself. And, as I mentioned earlier, when I started off with Agile, part of it was just studying so much of what it looked like at other places. So, reading a lot of case studies, or just at events, hearing talks from people, they're explaining how they use Agile, a particular Agile method for a project. And when I started using Agile for projects, and when I didn't see the results in the same way that they were initially presented to me, or when things went wrong, it's really easy to be hard on yourself. And so just understand that your Agile journey is not going to be identical to anyone else's. Everyone is not going to adapt to things immediately. Processes are not going to suddenly improve. Problems may not instantly disappear. All of that is okay. It is okay. And, just understand that, the process or the act of becoming Agile, being a high performing team, those things don't occur overnight. One of the things that was really, really eye-opening for me, and it really still is, but early on, when I first started pursuing, formal training on Agile and pursuing certifications, and when I went to the first several courses, and I would see, like, there were people there from organizations that, I considered to be at, really at the cutting edge, really had Agile, or were known, I should say, for having, for using Agile in their work. When I would see those people there and asking the same questions that I was asking, when I understood that they were also encountering the same issues that I was encountering, that was really eye-opening for me. And it just let me know that, things are not going to be perfect, but it's all about continuously learning and adapting. as well. And so that rolls over to my next point here, tip number 5, and that is committing to continuous learning. That is something that is going to be really, really, really important for you to do and to understand. Simply introducing Agile into your environment, just coming there and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and just kind of dropping on your team and being hands off that's not going to cut it. It is just understanding once you kind of spark that flame, and if you want things to be successful, if you want the team and the organization to really adapt to it, you are going to have to commit to continuous learning about Agile, building your knowledge, and in turn, continuously helping to build the knowledge of your team and anyone else who you want to bring along on this Agile journey with you. And so some ways that you can grow, some ways that you can do this is by attending training. So as I mentioned, seek in my experience, what I did in my journey, like I definitely sought out training, got some formal certifications, and definitely looked for different workshops and trainings on specific things, specific areas and pain points that I was encountering, the team that I was working with encounter. So definitely make way for that. Also, seek out mentorship. There are definitely people out there who have been where you are, who were at some point, they were there and trying to figure out a way to introduce Agile methods to their team, and they did it, or people who may have had problems with implementing certain aspects of Agile, but nonetheless seek those people out and ask them questions and, get some proper guidance along the way. And then number 3 here is to join communities of practice and interest groups. And there are a lot of them out there. I know right now, one of the good things, because a lot of us, everyone is remote right now, is that a lot of these interest groups are online. It's really easy to find them. You can go on sites like Meetup and check out the Agile Alliance and Scrum Alliance as well. And these are also good places to encounter, again, people who are more experienced than you are, or kind of going through the same things, and where you can kind of seek out their help and to get some proper guidance along the way. And tip number 6 is to share your findings. And this is really important to do both internally with the team that you're working on, for yourself, and it's also really important to do that, sharing your findings out to the community at large as well. And so some ways to do that is, number 1, hosting team retrospectives. And so, retrospective is it is a part of the Scrum Agile framework. However, you can really do them regardless of, I would say, if you're using a framework or not. And essentially, a retrospective is just a time or meeting to come together with your team. And in this case, I would recommend, if you're just starting out with Agile, just regardless of the framework, regardless of the methods that you're using, just find some time to come together as a team and to discuss what's working well, what's not working well, so that you can get that feedback early on and make the necessary adjustments. You might find out especially early on, you may find that, okay, this particular framework that we're using, these particular Agile methods that we're using, hey, maybe they sounded really great when I read about them. They sounded really great in that particular case study that I looked at, but for this team and the way that we work, maybe it's not working. So maybe we need to look at a different approach to Agile, maybe using a different method or framework. Another recommendation is to conduct training sessions. So again, as I mentioned, if you are the person who trying to spark agility in your organization with your team, you are going to have to do some training and some knowledge building. And so as you learn things, as you go out there and you get training and you are exposed to new teachings from mentors and those who are more experienced than you, and if it's nuggets of information that that can help your team, then take those things back and host a talk, a little brown bag, a little virtual talk for your team in these times, to kind of share that knowledge to them and help to bring them along the way as well. Third is to deliver presentations to your peers, so those outside of your organization. So find events, whether it's events like this one or others. It's important to share the things that you're experiencing, the things that are going well. Um, any new insights that you've discovered, because those things can help perhaps someone else to grow. They can help another team who might be in your shoes to grow, another person who's looking to spark that agility in their organization to grow as well. And on the same note, you can also do that by publishing articles, writing an article, and also through video as well, through video, and just sharing your thoughts online with others. Also, those are all ways that you can grow and help others to grow along the way as well. And just finally here, I just have some additional resources for you all to check out. Again, if you are at that early stage, where you want to help your teams to adopt Agile, you want to learn some more. These are some resources that I recommend. Again, first thing, if you haven't done it already, is to read the Agile Manifesto. Also, here's a Scrum Alliance and Agile Alliance. It's really two great resources that you can go to and get more information on different training and certifications that are out there. Then there's also DigitalGov, the DigitalGov Agile and Lean Community of Practice. This one is really, it's a listserv. And as I mentioned earlier, the importance of having those communities of practice and interest groups that you're a part of. This is an initial one to get you going as well, to get started. And, I always see periodically people send out emails about things, questions that they may have, issues that they may be encountering. It's also a good way that over the years I've been able to learn about different events and trainings that are going on as well. And then lastly, here's a Project Management Institute, another great resource to they have some resources on Agile and some certifications that they offer there as well. So these are just some resources to get you started in your journey. So that is it for me. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them during this time. Otherwise, I guess I'll give a minute. Does anybody have any questions at all? And if you don't right now, I will, 1 second. If something does come to mind later, I'm just going to paste in here my my LinkedIn information in the chat there. So if you have any questions that come to mind later, if you want to connect at all, feel free to connect with me there. All right.
So we have a question from Holly. So does everyone on the team need to know Agile for the Scrum Master to get started, or do you have to train the team first in addition?
That's a good question, Holly, and thank you. I would say no, they don't. And I guess in this scenario that I was presenting here, like let me back up. So I would say oftentimes if there may the agility and the shift to it may just come from that one person. So no, the whole team doesn't need to know it first off. But whoever that person is, if it's a Scrum Master, if it's a project manager, some leader of any kind who wants to implement Agile, then it's their responsibility to help to bring everybody up to speed from there. Hope that helps to answer your question.
Great, thanks, Holly. And then we have a question from Mela. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So their question is, did you collaborate with traditional project managers on an Agile project? If so, what was your greatest challenge, and how did you overcome to keep to a mostly Agile method?
I would say no. I haven't been in that situation where I've been sort of co-piloting a particular project, and there's a project manager who is really against Agile or doesn't know it, and there's that resistance. So I haven't been in that situation. I would say there have been instances where I've had to maybe step back and really to explain to people what it is. I'll give you an example. So I remember early on, again, just kind of getting a word of caution that, that some people may be resistant to Agile. And it, again, as I mentioned early on, the thing that I found is that people are often resistant to it because they've had a bad experience somewhere along the way. Somebody gave them some bad information, and things just didn't go quite right. And I found if you just talk to those people, just kind of to take some time just to kind of meet them where they are and to understand their experience, and then to help to maybe guide them on the proper aspects of Agile, I should say, that's something that can go along the way. But I guess back to your original question, I haven't worked, I guess, co-led a project with another project manager who was just totally against it, and there was any resistance there. So no.
Did that answer? Great. And do we have any other questions? I have a question.
Sure.
So what is your thought on Watergile? Well, I scroll up to the very, very top.
Watergile. I guess I've never heard of that one in particular, but I'm guessing I have heard of those hybrid approaches out there where people try to blend the two together. So I haven't referred to it that way, but honestly, I think that, as I mentioned in the talk, if there's only one specific portion of a project or one specific phase that makes sense for Agile to be implemented, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, I will say that if you are going to do any type of blended approach, if it is waterfall based, I would say that at the very least that you at least try to increase the amount of communication within that approach. So just make sure that, I guess, if you are going to go from just delivering certain things in different phases, that along the way and at very frequent points, just to make sure that you're building in enough communication to get the proper feedback that you need to have, and to also to keep the space for any changes to occur. So not to operate too rigidly, to be too waterfall driven, where you can't make any changes. So that's what I would say. Did that help to answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And then looks like we have one more question from Ashley. So sorry I missed that earlier. This is a Scrum specific question.
Sure.
And she's wondering if there are any tips with work in thin vertical slices rather than plan the whole thing at once. Thinking, and Ashley, feel free to come unmute yourself if I said that wrong.
Hi, sorry, I didn't have my headphones in, so my audio might be bad. I'm just trying to figure out if you have any advice on getting the team to break the project down into like increments or all the way down into like thin vertical strips, rather than having this, we have to plan the whole thing at once mentality, or even like feature specific sometimes of like, we need to have this whole thing figured out, rather than seeing it as we can do something small and that something small can deliver value.
That's a good question. I will say on one hand, if I would still plan things out to a point, at least to understand the goal that you want to get to, where you're starting, where you want to get to. But actually drawing their attention, like you said, like taking some time with them to understand and to be able to identify how you can break that product down into pieces. And so, definitely if you're working with developers, maybe there are certain things that can't be broken down quite into different phases because there are some dependencies. But I would say at least take some time to work with them and to ask them, or to try to get them to see how they may be able to break that product down into pieces. So for example, with some of the projects that I'm involved with, so again, we may that design phase might be the phase that we stop and really break down and use that agile approach, right? Where we are, we start out with putting some mock-ups together that reflect, the initial requirements, if you will, the initial features that we were given early on. And then from there, we will, just work in that iterative way. So we'll take those, work in 2 weeks and show the results. So, and I think part of it also is just kind of, it may take some time as well. So it may take some time for them to also see the benefits of doing it that way, to kind of showing them that there may be some, I don't want to say pressure, but breaking things down and just maybe concentrating on certain features in that, in those vertical slices just could help to take out a lot of risk of just building things or just planning things out and doing things all at once. So again, if you can just try to meet in the middle with them and just to see like what can possibly be broken down into phases and going from there. Does that help to answer your question?
Great, thanks. And we have 4 minutes left. So this is going to be the last call for questions. Anyone else? Going once. Going twice. 3 times. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for presenting. This was a really good session. And just so everyone knows, I went ahead and in the project team management Slack channel, I went ahead and created a thread off the announcement linking to Mike's LinkedIn. So thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you all.